have Sean Anderson here with us today. Sean is an inspector with the Inspectors Group.
The Inspector.
The Inspector.
The Inspector.
Oh, still just the Inspector.
The Inspector.
Okay.
We have lots of inspectors.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know why you confuse us by that. But
I just kept thinking, now there's a few more that are coming.
Yeah.
Maybe we added an S. We didn't add an S.
That's fine.
Okay, good to know.
It's all good.
Anyway, Sean has been an inspector for 12 years, and prior to that, he was a builder for 25 years. I have personally worked with Sean for
12 years.
12 years.
yeah, a lot of years. Yeah.
I always say you won me over when you did an inspection on a brand new build, and you said, "Run, don't walk."
Yeah.
So, welcome, Sean. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
you
me.
being
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, so I think the biggest questions that we get from clients is like, what makes an inspector qualified to be an inspector? Like, how does the system work for your industry?
That's kind of a two-part question because some guys might not be qualified.
Right.
Okay. Oh dear.
Oh dear.
So check if your inspector's qualified. All right, we got the answer already.
Legally, we're supposed to be licensed and certified.
Okay.
Certified even is a funny term as well, but there's a few ways to actually get your certification.
Okay.
You can go to BCIT, you can go to Douglas College, you can go to online programs as well. There's actually quite a few of them now. I did a few of them. I didn't like the first one I did. It was an American
Right.
Association of Home Inspectors or something like this. I forget what it's called. It's called AHIT or something. I didn't really like their format. It's kind of boring. So then I did another one. And then I did a training with a previous employer as well.
Okay.
And that training was really, really good.
Yeah.
Like
On the job.
outstanding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like you couldn't get better. And then you just keep doing upgrades. You
Right.
have to do credit hours just like you guys
Right.
have to do
Okay.
credit hours as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, though, in our industry, nobody polices that. So
Okay.
nobody actually goes, did you do your credit hours?
Really?
Except
Okay.
some insurance companies will look at it. Like
Okay.
my broker does.
Okay.
She's outstanding. She goes, get your credit hours or I'm not
Right.
issuing
Okay.
your license.
Okay.
So I do mine and you have to
Okay.
prove that you did it.
And do you have to do those, like we have to do ours every 2 years? Do you have to? Is
No,
it-
this is constant.
Oh,
Yeah,
constant. Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
technically, you really should be doing them like every month.
Really? Okay.
Do a
Okay.
course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I belong to the largest home inspection association in the world,
Okay.
Internachi. It's out
Okay.
of the States.
Okay.
We have a version of it in Canada as well called
Right.
Kanachi.
Oh.
Stupid terms.
Like,
It's
who
cool
comes up
name,
with
though.
these names?
Cool name.
Yeah.
And they get all their stuff from Internachi. So I do all my Internachi stuff. And I just, every time you get a break, you just kind
You
of
just
take a
kinda-
course.
Okay.
Right.
Online?
Online.
Okay.
So one of my I guess I don't know the little letters that we have by our names like
Oh, right.
NHI is
Yes.
National Home Inspector, which I am, and
Okay.
CPI Certified Property Inspector, which
Oh,
I
okay.
am, and CMI, which is Certified Master Inspector, which I am.
Okay.
Other guys have RHI. It just belongs.
Okay.
It's all the
Different types.
Belonging to
associations.
different associations.
So if
Okay.
someone's looking for an inspector, what accreditation should they be looking for?
They should have one of those designations.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
an NHI or an RHI, especially those two.
All right.
Just because they're in a bigger association and
Okay.
they're more policed.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And the BC government took over policing us.
Okay.
So where consumer protection looks after us and
Right.
they're doing a lousy job.
Okay.
Okay.
So in other words, you really should be careful as a consumer that you're
Absolutely.
hiring the right person for that.
And
for the job.
ultimately, referral is usually
Yeah.
the best
I mean, of
form.
course.
It really
Just
is.
have it,
I
yeah.
mean, that's why
Yeah.
building relationships
Yeah, it's so
with,
important.
with us over the years.
Yeah.
It's so important
Yeah.
because you see how your guy that you're referring out or woman
Yeah.
that
Well,
you're
and we
referring
see
out,
you work all the time, so then we're able to really know that when we're referring you, that we know that our clients are in good hands.
exactly.
And, yeah.
And of course, you can't discount years in business.
No.
I mean, if you've done 50 inspections or 5,000 inspections,
Yeah,
I mean, on the job
exactly.
is going to help you through. And of course, within Vancouver, there's certain types of construction, there's certain types of things that kind of happen within that age groups and so on. And we'll talk about that later. But you see it all the time. So you're walking into an inspection, I'm assuming, knowing what the things that are potentially going to come up in this inspection, and that comes from experience, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It does.
So-
And that's why I also think that it is important to have a construction background,
Right.
a trade background.
Right.
You're not just taking a course that was in a book.
Yes,
Right? Reading
yeah.
It's real.
text.
Like you've-
Right,
you've
this
done
is
it.
real. I know
Yeah.
what's behind that
Yes,
wall.
yeah.
Especially because he probably built this wall.
We actually all did.
Yeah. We built this.
We built it. Yeah. I actually was helping put up, you know.
and there's
great.
actually a video for
drywall.
that, so go check it out.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So those I
Okay.
actually did
Yeah.
even have meetings with, because I'm also a trainer for
Yeah.
the home inspection industry,
Oh.
and an examiner
I
for
knew
the
that.
home inspection
Right.
industry.
Okay.
I always brought it up to them. I think the criteria to become a home inspector should be greatly increased.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it should be a journeyman program,
Yeah.
Yeah.
5,000 hours,
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Make it something credible.
Yeah.
That's right. Like ticket.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I have trade tickets, and I think it's just so important.
Yeah.
It
It
is.
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you guys see it of course more than I do.
Yeah.
The cowboy that comes into the room. And,
Oh yes.
Well, especially in multiple offers over the last couple of years. Well, again, over the last 20 years, really. But anyways,
True.
who's counting?
Yeah.
But with multiple offers, you often see, there's 4 or 5 inspectors in a house at one time, and it's fascinating to
see the difference.
the difference, the way people are.
And it's interesting
handling it.
because, of course, Dana and I have worked with you for many years, and I think the main reason why we like working with you is your ability to deliver information to the client. We have a lot of times where you say, okay, these windows are single pane, they're not energy efficient, there's this, there's that, and then you can explain that to the client. The problem with that, but you also put it into perspective for them.
Yeah.
Hey, this is a 1970s building. This is exactly what you should expect from a 1970s building.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's of course there's things that can happen in an inspection, but you just build that frame of reference for them, which is crucial for them to understand, because a lot of people have no idea what you're talking about.
No. So true.
And are afraid to ask. So
and-
if you don't.
And are afraid
Yeah.
in general. Like
Yeah.
if you say, hey, the plumbing's leaking, or there's actually a water stain on the ceiling, for a lot of people who have no idea what's going on, that is something that they are exceptionally afraid of.
For sure.
So, and again, that's the important thing that Dana and I really appreciate with working with inspectors who can explain these things in a way that are going to help people understand it
Yeah.
and build frame of reference,
For
right?
sure.
Yeah.
And single pane windows, get a rag.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's-
I mean, it is what it is in
It
a
is
lot of
what it
cases.
is.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
exactly true, but it
Yeah.
also it is also educated agents as
Yeah.
well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they're able to
Go.
hear me say something,
Yeah.
and they can
And
even
be able to
chime in
reiterate
and
and-
go,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I do
we'll
that
see
too much. Sorry about that.
I actually like it when it is something that is adding to the conversation,
Right.
making them feel a little bit better
Yeah.
about this purchase, this
Yeah.
potential purchase.
Well,
Yeah.
because I mean, when you're talking about spending $1, $2, $3, $4 million on a
Oh, that's a
purchase,
cheap place.
yeah, exactly. This is pretty. It's a lot for people to take in these
Yeah.
inspections, and
It
you
is.
see their eyes get bigger and bigger and
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just easier to let's look at this in the big picture in a building of this age,
Absolutely.
this quality. This is,
And just this is what you can expect, and
or alternatively the opposite.
Yeah.
you're right.
Hey,
Run, don't walk.
This is something that we really need to consider
Yeah.
to move away from
true.
for these various risks, right?
Yeah.
And that's that's the relationship I think we all have
Yeah.
as a team. Dana and I really like to bring team members around us to help us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, inspectors are one of them, and mortgage brokers, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That is what makes truly good quality service. I
Absolutely.
think, right?
Well, it's a really good point too, because I think that's what's missing in the industry itself as a whole. Is home inspectors are often kind of looked at like we're the enemy.
Yeah. Well, you're here to squash this
Yeah.
instead
Right.
of make it happen, right?
Yeah.
And me,
Yeah.
I look at it more like, no, let's work together
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
how we can make,
Yeah.
even if we find something significant.
Yeah, like,
I
what
have
does that
no
mean?
idea what somebody's budget is.
No,
Yeah.
Right.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
let's work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
Yeah.
how much it might cost. Get
Yeah.
the trades involved,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the
And
deal
then-
can go through.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so
And you know what? It's the questions we have with our clients all the time is if you're not okay with this situation and potentially spending X amount of money in the future, this may not be the right spot for
Yeah.
you. But I would never have had that data unless we were
No.
chatting with someone like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
That's a
So
good-
again, working as a team, this is not me against you or me against whatever. It is just the team which is going to deliver the information to the client so that they can make an informed decision.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And that's the
Exactly.
ultimate.
So Sean, when you first go into an inspection, what sort of how do you start? How do you
Say hi.
yeah. After you say hi.
No, it's the inspectors.
Yeah.
No, inspector. Sorry. Oh, pardon me. Yeah.
It's the inspector.
All right.
Shoot.
But how do you sort of go about your
Yeah. What happens?
Inspection.
Like,
What
what's
happens?
the process?
The process, usually you pull up, you're looking at the house. Hopefully you're not going, oh God.
Yeah. Here we
but
go.
sometimes you do.
Sometimes, quite often I do. And then you are basically walking around the block first.
Right.
You always look at the neighborhood because you were looking at other properties, seeing if there's unusual movement in ground, see what other people have for perimeter drain systems, just looking around
Okay.
in general.
Getting a big picture.
Big
Yeah.
picture. Because
Yeah.
then when you get to the site, you can actually go, oh, wow, his sidewalks are doing this.
Right.
What's going on?
And that
Right.
explains stuff,
Right.
right?
So
Yeah.
it explains stuff. Looking back at the house, seeing how true it is,
Right.
but getting a picture of the roof from far back.
Yeah.
Really, you need to step back.
Yeah.
We hear that phrase all the time. It's really true.
Yeah.
You need to step back. Get
Yeah.
a good look at the house.
Yeah.
And then just do a basic property assessment. So the land assessment.
Yeah.
Then the building envelope, roof, outside, balconies. Look for drainage. What kind of drain tiles it has.
Yeah.
Everyone in the industry and your industry knows that I am the drain tile Nazi.
Yes.
To me, it is the single most important thing
Yeah.
around a house
Yeah.
in Vancouver. We have so much rain.
Yeah.
Did you know it rained in Vancouver?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wish it would stop raining. I'm ready.
Anytime. no.
Anytime.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
So those things are that. I mean, the interior of the house, it's easier than the
Right.
outside
Yeah.
for the most part, unless
Well, I
it's
mean,
a
I-
complex heating system.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the outside, there's huge costs for things going wrong. The inside, yeah, you can replace a cabinet or
Yeah.
a sink or so on, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so I can
Yeah.
totally see how that.
I mean, you guys know, especially being in the industry for so long,
Yeah.
the number one thing that comes out of an interior home inspection, especially in a condo, is moisture in the shower.
Yeah. Or
I was just
well,
gonna,
can't
I
get
was
that
gonna
light
say
to
it
work.
before
I
you
can't
actually
get
said
that.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so true.
Or what? Sorry.
I can't get that light to turn on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, half the
Yeah.
inspectors don't actually unscrew the bulb and check the socket to see if it has power.
Right.
Oh,
I
it's
had,
just.
I had one recently. There were so many lights that didn't work, and
Oh.
none of those sockets had power.
Really?
So there was something going on, and then it turned out the electrician called me and said, "Yeah, a rodent had eaten through the
Jeez.
Oh,
wiring,
wow.
Oh wow.
So a lot of inspectors may just be like, oh, the lights
Light
are
bulb.
obviously burnt out.
burned out."
Yeah. So
Interesting.
in terms of scope of work, like what if someone says, what exactly are you doing? Like what do you do when you do building inspection?
So it is visual. I
Yeah.
like to make everyone know it is visual. It's
Right.
super important because you got Mike Holmes out there basically punching holes in walls.
And saying this is broken
This
or
is
this
broken.
is
And
Right.
then, like, I've had clients go, well, I saw Mike Holmes and he cut a hole in the wall. Well,
Yeah.
I can cut a hole in the wall, no problem, but try to explain that to the
Right.
seller.
Yeah.
So it is visual. So you're testing as many circuits as possible,
Right.
okay, within a certain amount of time. Lights, electricity, taking panel covers off, and it's your discretion if you want to take a panel cover off or not. Some inspectors will not take the cover off.
right.
I take them off.
Well, you know,
almost
overheating,
everyone.
you can
Exactly.
see all kinds
Yeah.
of you can get some pretty major
Well, I've got some photos for you guys.
yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah.
Little rodents stuck in panels, right? So it's beauty.
Yeah.
Panels, testing the heating system. So, you know, if you have a heat pump, you're
Yeah.
going to test in all the modes. And
Right.
we use thermal cameras.
Yeah.
I started doing that more recently, showing that things are working, more to help you guys out.
Right.
If somebody's taking possession and something isn't
Right.
working, you
Yeah.
can refer back to
Right.
the report.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than that phone call. Was the heating working that day?
Yeah.
Well, I have no way to prove it then, right? So,
So I mean, essentially, you're looking at all the major mechanicals,
Yeah.
envelope to electrical, plumbing, and then cosmetics.
and then cosmetics.
Right.
And cosmetics are really, half the time, if there's something big going on in the house, the cosmetics are never even
Yeah,
looked at.
No.
exactly
Yes.
right. And then of course structural comes into that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
So
always
that-
know there's not a lot going on in the building if you're starting to talk about like the the delamination of
Yeah.
the like cupboards. I'm like, oh, okay. I think if this is a problem, we don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, it was one
Yeah.
of your inspections that I did recently
Yes.
where there was no power and some sockets too.
Yes, which actually apparently they had tripped it.
Oh,
So
Breaker.
yeah,
cool.
yeah, there you go.
So you briefly talked about thermal imaging. So can you see inside a wall? Like, can you see if the place is leaking, like leaky condo and stuff like that?
You can to a degree. So
Okay.
it really only penetrates the wall surface a small amount, depending on the piece of equipment you're using.
Right,
So
okay.
like fire department uses one that goes way into the walls.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
those are $20,000 cameras.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
My first camera ever in construction was $10,000, and you had to use two hands to hold it.
Right.
Right. It was crazy. Now,
Yeah.
little handheld, they're ones that plug into your phone.
Yeah.
They work really well. Some of them go only half an inch beyond the drywall.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's amazing what you can see. I've seen rodents in walls. You could actually see,
See
the
them?
warm
Really?
body of
Oh
a
wow.
rodent.
Okay.
So it
Also
was pretty
cool.
cool.
So do all inspectors use thermal imaging for? Okay. So that's that's an upgrade, and that's something that people should ask.
oh, I would
So
definitely.
so
Yeah.
again.
And ask if there's a charge for it.
okay.
Right.
'Cause
Okay.
Some of the
Some of
people
them
out
there'll be
there
extra
will
charge.
You extra
to use
for
that
that.
thermal
Right.
camera, which I
Right.
don't understand.
And what are the typical major things you pick up in a thermal image?
overheating in a panel? That's
Okay.
a big one. Even switches.
Right.
You've seen switches where you touch them, they're hot, and you take a temperature reading, and they're like really hot.
Right.
Really?
Yeah. So
Oh,
that
wow.
was because people don't put compatible switches on, say
Right.
a
Right.
solar switch or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Water. That's the
Water,
biggest
yeah.
one.
Right.
You
Yeah.
point, you don't see a stain. You look up, there's a stain. You
Right.
take your density meter, and there it is.
Right.
And I've been in situations where the thermal imager has caught in-floor heating failure.
Oh, big time.
Right. So radiant in-floor heating, hot water radiant in-floor heating is really, really susceptible,
Yeah.
especially depending on the type of product
Yeah.
they're using for it. I've seen leaks where you're like,
Yeah.
oh dear,
Yeah.
the in-floor heating system is leaking, and that's a major,
And that's a major one, and
cost.
it's
I
expensive.
was just going to say, I'm so glad you brought that up because that is probably the best thing a thermal camera can do.
Right. Okay.
Because I've been to new houses where I'm looking for the loops
Yeah.
Yeah.
and how they're doing them, how much care that guy put into
Yeah.
his work.
Yeah.
Where I've actually seen almost a V,
Oh,
and you know that's going to blow.
yeah.
Like
yeah.
how that even
Oh
got
wow. Like
through
past.
was,
Yeah.
and you just see it, and
Right.
right away you can just see the buyers when they look at that picture. They
Uh-oh.
go, "I'm out."
yeah.
You know,
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
that's digging up a floor.
Yeah.
It is.
It sure is.
Well, I mean, and everyone knows that in-floor heating, radiant in-floor heating is typically set in concrete, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're jackhammering up
Oh,
concrete to do,
Yeah.
for sure. So,
Yeah.
Big
so
deal.
yeah, really interesting. So I
So
mean,
the
if-
big things though during that assessment, like when you were
Yeah.
asking me what we do, is we're also looking for what kind of pipes you have,
Right.
what
Right.
color the pipes are. Is it gray? Is it gray is polybutylene most
Yeah.
part, and
Yeah.
sometimes in other colors too.
Yeah.
Kitec doesn't get enough play out there.
Okay.
Kitec is worse than poly-B.
Right.
Oh, really?
Kitec
Okay.
is awful. There is
Okay.
a massive class action lawsuit.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, from my experience, every as the building industry has evolved over the years, they've tried new products, and then some of those products have been great, and some of them have actually been hugely problematic.
Yeah.
And polybutylene is one of them from
From the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In
Kitec from 90s as well?
Late 90s to 2005.
Oh, okay.
2007.
Okay.
So understanding what products are being used in the house is really important to know where your failure risks are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely going to come up. So again, the inspector will be able to say, "Hey, problematic piping. It seems to be working," but I
If
always
it
say.
fails, it's when it
Yeah,
Yes.
I always say it's like a hot water
Yeah.
tank. Could last 10 minutes or it could last 15
For
years,
sure.
right?
You just don't
Absolutely.
Yeah.
know.
So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is kind of
Yeah,
for sure.
and there has been really great products that have come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the water on demand, it's that system is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When it first came out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not so great.
Yeah.
But now
But-
it's just absolutely wonderful stuff. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
piping, I'm old fashioned. I
Yeah.
like copper.
Right.
Well,
Well,
less problems,
yeah.
right?
You know, you get 40, 50 years out of it. So
Yeah.
So a really good segue into kind of the next part where we wanted to talk about, which is, what in typical age groups and building type of construction, what are like the major flaws or factors that you really want to consider? Like, for example, if you take a house built in 1910, typical house built in 1910, what are like the things that generally come up that are generally what make people, have risk or
Hesitate.
higher cost or hesitation towards
Well,
purchasing.
I think the number one thing that I see reactions from clients is, does it have asbestos?
Right.
Yes.
And
Right.
and
Yes, it does. It was built in
and here's
1910.
yeah, I mean, here's the question to that is, pretty much everything from, I think, 1990?
Well, 1990 technically.
Yeah. And older, like drywall,
Had asbestos.
mud, flooring.
Yeah, plaster.
They all had asbestos built into that.
That's right.
So I think when especially when we see I see young families come in and they're like, oh, asbestos. Like, what is the risk at that in those circumstances to a client?
There really isn't any risk unless it's disturbed.
Okay,
It has
right.
to be friable. Friable means that it's now airborne.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
So that's critical, and I always tell people that.
Right.
Yeah.
Paint is a form of encapsulating that
Right.
product, right?
Right, right.
Flooring over top of your old
But-
9x9
Like don't
tile.
disturb
your
that.
battleship
Don't
will
disturb
know,
it. Just
yeah,
put
yeah,
a
right.
new over it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Go over
I think the question is what we're looking for is if you leave it alone, you're fine. If you're going to go with a hammer and start ripping out your drywall, you pretty much want to be extremely careful.
You want to be really careful.
Well, you need to be prepared essentially
Yep.
to
Yeah, sure.
have the right.
Yeah.
But you need
People
your
in.
permits. You
Yeah.
need all this
Right.
remediation
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
technically.
It's a
so
big-
It's a big.
it's a big deal.
big
Right.
deal, and,
Yeah.
and it especially nowadays with real estate being so expensive,
Yeah.
people are putting everything they have into their home.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're like,
Yeah.
oh, but I want to knock out that wall. Oh, but that's
No, we
going
need
to.
go
Yeah.
down the process of
Right.
Yeah.
asbestos testing and
Yeah.
so on. That's a whole other video.
I mean, and of course that is a huge industry too. So,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think what we're getting at is asbestos is in the products that are out there in the building
Yeah.
world. You just can't disturb them. And if you have any question, if it has it, you need to get it tested.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as that.
And people ask me all the time, should I test it? And I said, no, I would assume that it has. Just
Yeah,
assume
just
it.
assume
Yeah.
it.
It's got it.
It has
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no
So
way it doesn't.
You would assume it
Yeah.
does instead of it doesn't, for
Yeah,
sure.
for
Yeah.
sure.
So
the other
asbestos-
thing
yeah,
is,
sorry,
with old houses like that, it's knob and tube wiring.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So
Okay.
knob and tube wiring
Yeah.
doesn't have a grounding system,
Yeah.
and it's usually a cloth or rubber sheathing that goes over the
Right.
the wires, which rodents love. They love to eat it.
Right.
So then you end up with bare copper.
Awesome.
The other one is galvanized piping.
Right.
Okay, so galvanized piping. Eventually, the insides of the walls
Turn
just start
into
little pins.
Yeah.
shooting
Right.
water out, right. So
Yeah.
those are probably some of
The
the bigger
key
ones.
things.
Old fuse boxes.
Yeah.
What about like leaking in you got an old 19 like how come that has stood there and
For so long.
for so long, but yet we're building these places and all of a sudden in the 80s that everything has turned to paper.
Good question,
Yeah.
Brad. I tell you,
Oh, you're welcome.
because they built them well.
Right.
Right.
That's why.
Right. Okay.
They
Yeah.
put
They didn't
everything
cut
they
corners.
Had. They put their heart into every
Yeah.
house they built.
Yeah.
They knew that, Joe is building the frame. Uncle Bob is coming over to do
Yeah.
the siding. And when they have Christmas dinner, they don't want to be fighting about Joe did a bad wall and Bob
Right.
didn't do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the way it used to be. There used to be
Yeah.
so much pride in construction.
Yeah.
It's not that
Kinda
way
sad,
anymore.
yeah.
It's very quick.
Yeah.
We got to make our money.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's sad. I mean, I see some really good stuff out there.
Yeah.
But
But you gotta look for the good stuff
You do
too.
have
Of it.
to look.
Yeah.
You do have to.
So then we take that we'll go into more of the condo world. Like, I mean, the condo world, we see the way that Vancouver was developed. We had majority of stuff built in the 70s.
Yeah.
We had a big building boom, I think, in the 70s. And then in the mid to late 80s, we had a big building boom in early 90s. And then, of course, now we've got so like in condos, what are the things to look for in those different age groups in terms of risk?
Mostly on the envelope.
Okay.
So of course we all know EFS,
Right.
face sealed EFS. So EFS is basically a styrofoam with a stucco on top.
Right.
And as you can imagine, being Vancouver, being so wet,
Yeah.
you get that crack in the stucco, it gets into the styrofoam, and all of a sudden, either it's falling off or going in.
Right.
Right.
So that was the biggest problem.
Water.
Water.
Yeah.
We didn't build with overhangs. We still don't build
Right.
a lot with overhangs.
So you're talking mostly right now about those built in the 80s and 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
And then so Yeah, we'll continue with those, and then let's go back to what to look for
Yeah.
in the 70s too.
And then 80s, 90s also was again some piping
Right,
issues.
yeah.
Wolverine copper piping
Right.
at one time.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I shouldn't name Wolverine, but
But you did.
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I named
Yeah.
Kitech, so
Yeah, yeah.
it was problematic, especially on
Yeah.
heating systems.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that is another one. Drainage again
Right, okay.
is another issue.
Yeah.
So
All right.
Yeah.
um,
And what is your take on, obviously a lot of those, especially in the 80s and 90s, obviously were built in that, that building code that tried to get kind of funky and pretend we were in California, but again, we get too much rain and with no overhangs in the EFIS and all of
and
that
I put
stuff.
the vapor barriers on the wrong side of the wall.
Well, and then there's that. And so then I guess, what is your feeling when a lot of these buildings were what we call rain screened in the sort of, early 2000s? Like when that has happened, what's your feeling when?
Well, it's kind of a touchy subject with me because I
Yeah.
think it's become such a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Right.
That I think some buildings get done because they found moisture in some areas and they
Yeah.
decide to do the whole thing.
Right.
But they didn't necessarily need.
Couldn't you have just repaired it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Couldn't you
But
have
also the
that?
city of Vancouver has regulations for if you're replacing X amount of the
Exactly.
siding, you have to do it all,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So they're also part
They
of
are.
that as
Yeah.
well.
They
right?
really are, and
Yeah.
it's scary because I even remember, a couple of concrete towers in the city,
Mm-hmm.
like full concrete walls, concrete floors, and reading depreciation reports or envelope studies that say that we recommend having the exterior siding replaced with a rain screen system.
But how can you do that?
It's
it's
concrete.
concrete.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it is a huge industry.
Yeah.
In the old days,
Yeah.
the engineering companies would come in, they'd assess everything, and they'd say you need to have a contractor come in and give you some information on the envelope. Now those same engineering companies go, and here's our card. We can
Right.
now do that for
Right.
you.
Right.
So,
Right.
If I identified a whole bunch of stuff wrong in a house,
Yeah.
I wouldn't go here.
And
here's
here,
my
and I'll
card,
come fix it for you. Yeah.
It's,
No,
to
I
me, a
agree.
conflict of interest.
is.
Yeah.
It's a huge
I would
industry.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
rain screen technology has changed a lot over the years. That
Yeah.
first generation wasn't so good.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
But number 3, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Number 5, I'm not too sure about it
Let's
yet.
see.
Right.
Well, exterior insulation now,
Right.
and they're doing all kinds of stuff that we don't know the answers
You
to.
don't know yet.
Yeah.
You
at
really
this
don't.
point.
It's
You just look
always
up and you see all
changing.
that rain hitting that
Yeah.
insulation,
And
and then
you're
they
like,
put a metal panels
That's
over it.
exactly right. Yeah.
Oh dear. Yeah. Yeah. fair enough.
So from the side of the 70s, the things that I see coming up kind of a lot in buildings are
Parquet membrane.
Parquet membranes. We're starting to see these things come
Oh,
up
yeah.
more, and that's not an inexpensive
No.
project,
No.
right? I mean, I think what a lot of people need to realize is a building sits on the structure, but the parquet extends to pretty much the sidewalk.
Yeah,
So we have landscaping over top of the underground garage.
that's right.
And like, what is the risks for having water ingress coming into your garage and all the rest of that? Which you walk in there, you see these metal pans and all these.
I just left a doozy this
That.
morning.
Oh, did you? All right.
And the building itself is built like a tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It used to be a commercial building,
Okay.
so it was built very, very well.
Yeah.
Even the steel that is now very exposed because concrete's falling from the
Right.
ceiling is like this thick. It's
Wow.
massive. It's
Right.
way bigger than what you'd use on
Oh, wow.
normal construction, but they have let the membrane go completely.
Oh.
And concrete's just falling out of the ceiling because
Right.
the steel is corroded and it's pushing the concrete out of the way,
Right.
right? So
Okay.
it's a nightmare.
And of course, when you have water coming through a slab, I mean, what's the structure is the rebar.
Yeah.
And
Steel.
Yeah.
it is steel. So if you have water coming through, then you have oxygen hitting the rebar. So therefore, the rebar will rust, and then we have a structural
Yeah.
issue, right? And I think the big, if anyone has followed that big collapse in the States, this is exactly what happened.
It's exactly what
Right? They didn't service their membrane
Yeah.
over top of the parquet, and the whole building collapsed because of it. So parquet membranes are
Huge.
are
Yeah.
going to be
It's
huge.
huge.
And typically, what is the lifespan of one?
35, 40 years on a 70s building.
Right.
What I'm seeing more and more in depreciation reports from, say, buildings built in 2000, they're already talking about doing slab
Oh,
membranes.
really?
Oh,
They're
wow.
giving them like a 25, 30-year lifespan.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So-
Wow. Gosh, I feel like I've met a lot of 40 to 50-year-old buildings that haven't done their parking membrane.
and they're all coming up.
And they're all coming
Yeah,
up.
for
And then, of course, they're also getting rain screened. So
Right.
you
Right.
have,
So there's some
like
big-
multi-million dollar
Yeah.
projects taking place in
Yeah.
the buildings. The good thing about those 70s buildings, though, they are built.
They are solid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Back to that whole thing
Yeah.
of just a lot
Yeah.
of
But
Attention.
of course you get the attention to do, but you kind of, you don't have the energy efficiency that you expect. So there is
No,
some
there's
kind
pros
of
and
give and-
cons.
give
There
and
is,
Yeah.
take
there
there,
is.
right?
But
Yeah.
I gotta say, those old buildings, they're not airtight. They are drafty.
But this
You
is
flip
why
the
they-
bick and the
Yeah.
flame goes out.
Yeah.
But now,
Yeah.
what we're finding now,
because they're
in
too
new
air.
buildings,
They're too airtight.
mold everywhere.
Right.
Open
Yeah.
a closet, corners
Yeah.
got mold. Windows, they keep
Yeah.
their blinds closed all the time.
Right.
Mold,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you get
Yeah.
a funky smell, and it's just
Yeah.
people not using their fans.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just to kind of recap on that, so 70s is just going to be about maintenance of, it's not necessarily engineering issues, it's maintenance issues.
Yeah.
So they haven't made an error, and it's just like, hey,
Well,
stuff,
it's things like
stuff getting old,
plumbing,
right?
like the
Things-
plumbing
yeah.
system needs to
Yeah.
be redone, and
And
My
I-
knees need to be
Yeah, that's right. And then in the 80s, 90s, we have more envelope issues,
Yeah.
rain screening
Yeah.
and water ingress issues with some, like, things like products, piping issues, like
For
where we
sure.
can see. So now we had this kind of building push in Vancouver from 2000 to now,
Yeah.
where they've really started to build. What are some of the things you're seeing in new builds and newer, like,
newer. The last 20 years.
yeah,
New builds. Some of them are scary.
Yeah.
right.
They're too quick.
Yeah.
They go up way too fast.
And yet people have this feeling like, oh, it's newer, so
It's
it's
new.
better.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't name the building, but there is a few buildings that are
Yeah.
so questionable. It's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
You see glue lines all over the side of them on their
Yeah.
panels. You see concrete already falling in the parkade. I think a lot of it is there's not enough trades involved,
Right.
like actual licensed trades.
Trades.
It's basically a lot of labor
Right.
and unskilled labor.
Yeah.
And then the
Then
skilled
the trade
person
is
comes in
trying
and
to make
signs
sure,
off on
yeah.
it, right?
And I've heard that story.
Yeah. That's
many
what I
times.
think. And it's the same
Gosh,
with
these
single
skilled
family
laborers
homes.
signing
Right.
off on stuff that they haven't done. That's a bit
Yeah.
scary. Isn't
So,
it,
so
legally?
I mean, I think that the thing to understand here is even if you're buying a newer or new
Yeah.
product, you
You
still
still want an
need
inspection.
to have someone look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still need to have an inspection done on it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's quite funny. You're going to spend $3,000 a square foot on some fancy condo.
Yeah.
So you're going to spend, a few $1 million on your suite, but you're not going to spend $400 on an
Yeah.
inspection.
Yeah.
Oh, and this
Yeah.
is what I say to clients all the time: is you buy a $10,000 car, you get an inspection done for $150,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you would not think about not getting an inspection
No.
on it.
No.
Yeah. So I mean, it's worth the money
It's
for
definitely,
sure, right?
it's definitely worth it.
And of course we're seeing a lot of these single family builds now in the new construction side of things, and I'm really, like, for the most part, I'm not seeing a great quality of build. Like, I'm seeing foundations out of square, and I'm seeing, where at one end of the house, the flooring is like 3 inches different.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see a lot of these kind of quality issues with new construction now. And I've had several new construction inspections where my client has decided to move away because there's just not the attention to detail. And the first thing they ask me is, well, if it's like this on the outside, what am I missing on the inside, right?
And I say that to people
Yeah.
all the time.
Right.
If I've been here for 20 minutes and I've just now identified, I now have an 80-page report for you.
Yeah,
Right.
on
You've
little
been here.
tiny behind that you can see
going on.
what's behind the walls,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, that's always.
I mean, I was
Yeah.
in a recent construction site and just kind of watching because I was doing one unit that was finished and went over to the other side. He was hanging the drywall up. He wasn't even hanging the drywall correctly. All the boards were like this.
Well,
Oh,
you
right.
should have asked me to come.
That's right.
I was really good at it when we made the studio. Very good. I think, might be my next job.
I very much did it all.
Yeah.
This side. Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
I did one, and I think the job was taken away from me.
Yeah.
I think we've just, as a society, have pushed people away from doing trades.
So the part I love the best is when you show me your last inspection pictures.
Oh.
So like, what are the craziest things that you've seen in inspection? And I hope you can share some pictures with us because we'll overlay them here and see how. it goes.
I do have photos and I'll
Okay,
send
great.
them to Tara. So there's just so many. It's hilarious. I actually had one this weekend. I was standing on a roof, on a wood roof I normally don't walk on because you really
Shouldn't.
it can be dangerous.
Yeah.
And I was just, oh my God, the view is just so awesome. And then I'm like sliding.
Oh, no.
sliding,
No.
slid right off. and landed. I landed it perfectly, but the knees are really sore.
Uh-oh.
But,
Was this a house?
Yeah. But the view was just
It was too good. It was
die
worth it.
for it.
Well, you're still
So,
here.
so we're really happy you're still here.
Yeah.
So that's
So
good. No broken
that,
necks.
That was kind of fun.
Okay.
And they were playing volleyball on the beach, and I was like, "That's so cool! I can see them from here." But some of them I wouldn't even really say on video because
Okay.
some of them are really disgusting.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of disgusting.
Like in terms of like the way the house is kept.
Houses
and-
kept.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been in plenty
Yeah,
of.
like
Yeah.
You're
wanna
just like
throw
oh.
up.
Yeah.
It's just nasty.
Can I wear my shoes, please?
I actually keep a spare set of socks in my car.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
sometimes the
You have to
it's
throw
just
them
so
out.
dirty.
Yeah.
And I'm really
Yeah.
meticulous that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the funnest is when you go into an attic and you'll see the raccoons.
Oh,
Right.
They're
And they go
waving at
after
you.
you?
Yeah. so
Oh, they don't
note,
run away.
No.
They come out.
So note to self.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, first you lift that hatch and the cascading rat droppings fall on you.
Yes.
And
Oh,
you've
yeah.
ingested a few.
Yeah.
They're not quite like a Tic Tac.
No.
But then,
They're not a
No.
half calorie mint.
Oh Jesus! But those raccoons, there's babies.
Oh, vicious.
Mama's mad.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
mamas,
Yeah.
right?
mamas. Yeah, they get mad.
They get mad.
No.
So those, but if you're way in the back of the attic,
And then you see them.
and then you see them,
Or-
you gotta
And you're
get out.
stuck.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
I have climbed through the webbing of the rafters, trying to get away from them.
Right.
So that
Oh,
those are pretty
wow.
fun. I am allergic to bees too, so
Oh, so I'm sure a lot
I've
of.
seen beehives, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh,
and my wife always gives me hell, like, Sean, why don't you have an EpiPen in your bag?
I was just gonna say I didn't know
I
this,
just
and
fell
I
off
feel
a
like
roof. I'm fine.
I feel like now I want to carry one in my bag when you're around. Yeah.
Rodents in electrical panels is also
Really?
still shocking.
Right.
Right.
And it, like, why are they there? The warmth.
They love the warmth and they love eating the
Oh,
sheathing on
okay.
the wire.
Right,
But
right.
Okay.
if you actually find one that actually has a little nest in there too, so you'll see little babies still in there, still
Oh,
alive.
wow.
Those are pretty gross.
That is
too.
pretty gross, actually.
Going into a crawl space,
Oh.
and those are the worst.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been in a few. I actually had a real estate agent come into one with me, and we basically took all our clothes off when we got out of the crawl space
Yeah.
because we were coated in rat crap.
Really?
Well, and
Coated.
I'll tell a funny story on that because
Ew.
Sean did the inspection on my house when I bought it, and the house was vacant for 5 years. And
Oh, wow.
look at his face.
Oh, God.
There was rodents
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
in the crawl space. There was rodents everywhere, and I remember you going down there. He hops down and he hops back up and says, "This is pretty gross. You should look." Anyways,
I think I said, you don't want to buy this.
yeah, I said, "Yeah, I want to buy it."
I love it. I love the project.
Yeah.
You know, you look at a hole in the wall here, and
Yeah.
you know the rat's looking over there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Anyways,
Rodents,
Rodents
crawl
are big
spaces
ones.
are just
yeah,
nasty.
and of course you get crawl spaces that aren't finished. Like no, it's just on dirt
Yeah.
too, right? So
Yeah.
you get all that. Yeah.
And I was in one crawl space out here probably 3 years ago. I was in the crawl space. I kept smelling something just foul, and there was a sewer leak. Well, of course, while I was there, the pipe actually broke, so there was
Oh.
sewage everywhere, and I was coated in sewage
Oh.
too. So,
Ew.
All right.
yeah, so it's fun.
It's good. That's awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing those pictures, and I'm sure you do as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Yes,
As
thank you.
always, you're
Cool.
you're really appreciated,
Thank you.
and we thank you again.
Excellent.
So if you like what you see, like, share, and subscribe.